Before this video starts, I want to preface that no matter how, into it or passionate I get about this topic, I want you all to know that this is just my opinion on Super Paper Roblox. This does not have to affect how you view the game. If you think the game is the best thing ever and the second coming of Christ, then you're free to believe that. I know that Super Paper Roblox is a part of many of your childhoods and is kind of like the best thing ever to you, and that's okay. Just also, please respect that this is also my opinion and the opinion of a lot of people that I've talked to over the years. So without further ado, and without any more jargon, let's actually get into the video. Super Paper Roblox. I have been waiting to make this video for 5 years now, but I've always tried to wait until I've had some sort of platform to voice my gripes with this game. I tried 2 years ago, but I feel like that was a very poor way of communicating my thoughts since I didn't really speak. But now, I get to talk about it, and really dissect this game. I get to talk about its incredible highs and its pitiful lows. Because SPR is a game that does an excellent job of world building and creating mysteries around an antagonist, only to throw all of it away at the last second. The ball was in its court, and it fumbled. The failure of Super Paper Roblox's ending is so bafflingly stupid that no one has bothered ever making a sequel without outright retconning the ending. And in the end, the blame falls solely on one character. But I'm getting ahead of myself. You might be asking, oh no, you goofy goober, why are you so harsh on SPR? Aren't you an AF fan? It's just a Roblox game. The story doesn't need to be perfect. And to that I say, welcome to the channel. You clearly haven't seen that it's my job to take these games very seriously. But in all seriousness, pun intended, if making these videos has taught me anything, it's that Roblox games, just like any other game on any other platform, are just as able to tell competent and good stories. Sure, there may not be many, but those that exist are quite captivating to me, and for that reason, we shouldn't use "it's just a Roblox game" as an excuse for a game being a pile of garbage. Speaking of garbage, back to SPR. This review is something so large that I simply just couldn't do it alone. So for that reason, I've once again reached into the hellscape that is Stars Align community and plucked my friend Sylv to join me once again.
Hi, I'm Sylv. It's been a bit since I was on here, so a lot of you probably don't recognize me, but I am a good friend of Noel that he decided to bring on to his channel here to help him with this video. Since we both know a lot about the game Super Paper Roblox, and we have many shared critiques of the game. I'm sorry for basically forcing Noel to hold this video for so long, so I won't really hold you for much longer. Alright, let's actually start the review.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Anyways, remember to like and subscribe, and let's get into it.
First off, I do gotta say that the gimmick with the two-dimensional decorations most of the time works really well. Almost all of them are very well drawn, they look really nice, they blend really well with the world. There is one exception to this, but I'll get to that later. The only real complaint I have is the fact that it's a three-dimensional game. So these decorations don't really blend as well with the rest of the world as you might want it to. And again, at parts, it works really well, but most of the time it breaks the illusion a bit that you're walking around in a paper world when there are three-dimensional houses and all the obstacles are three-dimensional, but that's a bit more of a nitpick than an actual complaint. To work around this, I was personally hoping a bit that they maybe could have added some decals to the geometry in the houses, so it looked like it had like this black outline, this black border, like the rest of the decorations, so it would have blended a bit better. And I don't really know what the Roblox studio technology was like back then, but I feel Super Paper Roblox as a whole would work much better as just a 2D game through and through. I don't think they have to change the platforming aspect, but just make it two-dimensional. I'm pretty sure that would have been possible back then. Not sure how much effort that would take, but I feel like it would all be worth it for how good that would look and how much better that would blend. And that also fixes a problem I will talk about in a bit. A bit of a personal side note, but I feel like the whole casino part, the whole chapter 4, looks really good even for 2023 standards. So wrapping the little visuals part up, I think they did a very good job with the visuals for the most part. There are a few parts that stick out a bit like a sore thumb, so it drags the whole experience down a little bit. Most chapters look really great and are very unique, and there are very few exceptions to this. That would be chapter 3. That one is really boring. Now, moving on to the gameplay, this one's gonna be much longer than the visuals. If you don't already know, the gameplay of Super Paper Roblox is mostly just a typical Roblox platformer. So, an obby. And most of the time, they pull off the obby part very well. They did a good job making most of the obstacles look interesting, and they still keep this papery theme while doing that. The only issue I have with the obstacles themselves is they maybe tried a bit too much with the whole paper theme, and so they made some of the obstacles 2D as well. That usually wouldn't be a problem, but specifically for some of the fire and some of the spikes, you can't see them from the side. So a few times in my own personal few playthroughs, I ended up just jumping into nothing and dying because I couldn't see that it was spikes from the side. The biggest issue I personally have with the gameplay is when they try to do something a bit different from the typical platformer. Luckily, they don't do this much, but there are a few examples where they try and fail oh so miserably. And even though there are so few examples, they still drag down the whole experience so much. First off, the whole guess the door section in chapter 2. Personally, I don't really hate guess the doors sections too much, so the idea wasn't that bad. They just didn't pull it off too well for two main reasons. Number one being that they kind of hid the exit from players' view. So you would enter a room and you would see no door to go through, so you would leave the room only to find out that the end was hidden somewhere in that room, which kind of sucked. So it wasn't really finding the correct door to go through, it was mostly just finding the correct door and then looking around it until you found a cheaply hidden exit somewhere. Now, this wouldn't really be too much of an issue if they didn't also have other rooms that just end in a dead end. Like, if the end was the only room where you would enter and there would be no other doors to go through, it might have been a bit more obvious that it was hidden somewhere. But there were a bunch of examples where you would just go in a room and there would be no other doors to go through, so you would just have to turn back and go for the door you just went in. The only real justification I can see for this is that they were trying to give the player some sense of direction, so they knew that like this place was bad, there was nothing here leads to anything, so you should go the other way. But instead of just making literal dead ends, I think they should have gone with the approach of making every room a bit more distinct and different from each other. So you can enter a room and recognize, oh, I went to doors in this room, this leads nowhere, and then turn back, instead of quite literally being forced. That might even make the exit a bit easier to spot, since it would be the only dead end room. Now for the whole second part of chapter 4. You just heard me praise chapter 4's visuals, but the gameplay turns horrid after the first, obstacle platforming part. If you haven't played the game, I'll give you a bit of a quick rundown of how the second part works. So you get dropped off in this room with a bunch of other random characters that you never see again. A new voice tells you that you've been trapped in this, the whole casino was a trap for you, and there's no way for you to escape. And that's it. That's all the game tells you. You're in a room with random people and you think you have no escape. Now what your goal is to talk to the NPCs a bunch of times until they randomly disappear, and then you will go with them. You'll also disappear, and then you can do the whole second part. But why would you talk to all the NPCs more than once? Like, maybe you'll speak to them once and then a random character disappears, which you probably won't recognize because you've never met these people before, and then you're just confused. Why would you speak to them again? You look around the room, you find nothing. There's no audio trigger, audio indication that someone's vanished, like a little sparking sound or something. Nope, just randomly vanishes, and you probably won't notice. I certainly didn't. I spent so long in that room. until I finally looked up a YouTube tutorial and found out what my goal was. Maybe they could have trapped you with characters you already knew, so one vanishing might be a bit more different, or they could have made the NPCs hint towards people disappearing a bit earlier. They do hint, but that's way too late and you've already figured out what the whole ordeal is. Or maybe even just make the NPCs say something a bit different when you speak to them, because most of their little one-liners blend together. It just seems like they're repeating the same thing, so you're not really getting anywhere with just speaking to the NPCs. So after you, probably out of sheer luck, get past that section, you're dropped off in a massive casino maze, another maze flipped on the roof, where your goal is to make it into some random bucket hanging on a wall. So you have to go through the maze, find these little gravity flipping pads which you step on, and then you are on the other maze on the ceiling. You gotta switch through mazes to get to the end. This part is very unique. I thought it would be pretty fun, but the main issue is that it's a bit hard to read. It's a bit hard to tell where you're actually going to land. Maybe that's just a Roblox camera or something. So you can't really tell where the game wants you to go. Maybe they could have made like a line of NPC dialogue guiding you towards the goal or something, but there's just really no indication. But even when you actually figure out where the hell you're supposed to go, it doesn't even get much easier. Since even if you can actually understand what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to go, half the gravity switching pads are just there to revert your progress and send you back to where you started. So what will most likely end up happening is just you running around touching random pads until suddenly you're in the right spot. That's how I won anyway. Now, my final gameplay annoyance is the whole memory black and white section with 1X. I'm not saying his full name, but you know who he is. In general, chapter 8 is just way too long. It could have easily been split up into multiple chapters, but I'm not gonna talk too much about that. What I will talk about is the most tedious goddamn part I've ever done in a freaking video game, like, ever. Seriously. Again, if you haven't played Super Paper Roblox, you get stopped by some guy called 1x1x1x1, or 1x as I'll be calling him, because that's way too long to say a billion times, and he tells you that he's just gonna stall you, so he does some weird magic thing that doesn't really get explained at all, and then he transports you to some black and white version of some areas you've already done from different chapters. From here, your objective is to find and speak to all the NPCs of 1X that are scattered around the specific areas. Doing so will teleport you to the next area, where you do the same thing again. And then you repeat this for 20 goddamn times in a row. First off, just like in chapter 4, they don't even tell you like, oh, talk to NPCs to progress or anything. No, you're just supposed to like guess. But at the very least, compared to chapter 4, it's very obvious once you get teleported because you're in a completely new area. So when you actually figured out that you're supposed to talk to the NPC a billion times, it's just so goddamn annoying to do so many times in a row. They don't even try to make it easy for you either. The NPC is always in the most annoying spot you always check last. So it's definitely going to take you like 10 minutes or something on your first playthrough. I know that doesn't sound like much, but doing the same thing over and over and over really gets boring when you're doing it for 10 minutes in a row. Now, because this is a review and not just a big complaint, I will also say that I like the small puzzle segment in chapter 6. You had to look at a design on a wall that resembled some blocks in another room, and you had to remember the design so you knew what blocks to jump on so you could progress. It was pretty unique, and I had fun doing it, so yeah, no complaints there. So to wrap up the really long gameplay segment, they did a very good job of the platforming for the most part, excluding the 2D decorations that you couldn't see from the side. But when they tried to diverge from this and do something a bit more special, most of the time they screwed up and it was just boring as hell. It just makes me a bit sad because, as we can see in chapter 6, they do know how to make an actually good segment that isn't just platforming. Alright, that's all from me. Now for Noel's lore analysis, of course.
The story of Super Paper Roblox is something that starts off extremely strong, but quickly nosedives after a certain point. Like I said earlier in the video, the game does an excellent job of building tension, only to throw it away at the last second. But once again, I'm getting ahead of myself. We will get to him. Trust me. So the plot of SPR is as follows. The protagonist, who is already implied to have saved Paper Robloxy in the past, assists the citizens in uncovering the various mysterious events going on around the town, eventually uncovering a sinister alliance of villains tracing back to an unknown individual named Antagon. Now, early chapters of the game do an excellent job of slowly revealing the layers of this mystery, even if there's a ridiculous amount of characters to remember. That is one of the many gripes I have with the game. Unlike AF2, which had an intro explaining the events of the previous game, SPR throws you in assuming that you already know most of these characters and the mythos of Paper Robloxia. So it's a little hard to get into, especially when the dialogue is this freaking wordy, but I digress. The game's plot builds and builds and builds up until Chapter 7, where in my opinion the story peaks. Pink Eye, Rosanda, and by proxy Antagon have brainwashed Trenton and instigated a war between themselves and the musical world, with the player and their friends caught in the middle. Surely, the mastermind of this conflict is a powerful threat who isn't willing to back down from a fight. Surely, right? The person who was able to invert gravity within an entire casino, the same person who allowed 1x1x1x1 to escape his captivity, the one to liberate the Bandlands, summon the Eyes, to steal the plot book. Surely they are a powerful threat that we as the player must defeat, right? Well, strap in, friends, because this is the part where we talk about him. Fair warning, I'm going off script for this one because I need to tell you in my own words just how Antagon's character ruins the game and killed this franchise. Okay, maybe I'm exaggerating, but still, let me jump into it right now. So, Antagon, in the beginning of the game, is set up as this super ridiculously mysterious character who is just doing all these things and we do not know why. We don't know how he has the power that he has. We do not know why he's doing what he's doing, but he is ridiculously powerful and ridiculously imposing. We never get to see his face. We don't know what he looks like. We just hear about him. And not only that, while he's not the one like doing the actions, he is letting these villains free and having them do these actions, which just shows like, oh, if he's able to free and control and have all these powerful people on his side, surely he is even more powerful than they are. And that is a good build-up to him actually being more powerful than them. Now, when we get to Chapter 9, or I think it's 9, yeah, right, 9, the finale, even through the cutout dimensions, they show kind of like a progression of more bad things that he's done throughout these different cutout dimensions. And it's building even more and more. Who is this guy? How is he so powerful? And we kind of know why he's so powerful at this point as well. So it's just this really big buildup. And when you actually see what the final dimension, what Antagon's castle actually looks like, on paper, this is kind of like a good payoff to that. He is this super powerful, threatening, imposing character with this huge, powerful, threatening, imposing castle and army. And then we see his mom. And this is where it just falls apart. Because him having a mom, and then the way she talks about him, we know for a fact immediately that Antagon is not this powerful person. He is a child. And that is just where the entire story falls apart. Antagon, being a child, goes against everything that the story was building towards. Antagon is poised as this super powerful threat, but instead he is a child who has not only is he a powerful child, because in fiction there's lots of powerful children out there, he has no motive for whatever he's doing. It could have been, if he was just a little child, it could have worked out if like his mom was like abusive or mean to him or something. And that is what shaped him into doing what he was doing. Or maybe he's just insane and is just not someone who can be empathized with. He's just a crazy kid. But he's neither. He's a character that has a loving mom, albeit though she's quite forgetful if she let her son run off and destroy the world. And he cries immediately when confronted, making it either seem like he's just a crybaby who knew what he was doing was wrong, but he did it anyway for whatever reason, or it makes his apology come off as fake. Like, oh, like a kid who knows something that they did was wrong and is just crying just to get out of a situation. It just makes Antagon just apathetic, not empathetic. It is just ridiculous. And the fact that he's a little kid and all these villains who are so strong were following his orders blindly, it just also makes them look really, really stupid. And even more stupid that they all just give up in the end. Like, Yes, he's a maybe they, okay, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they also didn't know that they were working for a little child. When this reveal comes, I am very surprised that none of them, especially 1x1x1x1, which is actually what I thought the story was building towards when I first played it, would come in at the last moment, steal the plot book, become ultra powerful, and be the final boss. But that doesn't happen either. He's kind of dead, and it's kind of given like this sad ending with scriptless, even though there's no build up to that either. Nothing is satisfying about this ending. Antagon is a kid, he cries and gives up. All the other villains that we had, they cry and give up. 1x1x1x1, the only like captivating villain who has like a captivating tie to one of our protagonists, he's just gone. He's assumed to be dead. He's just gone. Tess is just gone. And he was the most compelling thing now that Antagon is just kind of thrown face first in the water. And they all the characters just forgive them, and they have this big old party despite the rampant death and destruction that happened. There is just no consequences for anyone. Now, why is that? Now, either Explode One is stupid, and, well, he is pretty stupid. Let's be real, he is very stupid. But I also feel like the lack of bosses in the game really killed it here. I feel like if they had boss battles, they could have made Antagon a powerful, imposing threat, and I wouldn't be surprised to learn that Antagon was actually meant to be a powerful, imposing threat, but due to the limitations of the time, quote-unquote, limitations of the time, they just couldn't make a boss. So maybe that's their reasoning, but maybe that's just giving Explode too much credit. Anyways, rant over. At the end of the day, Super Paper Roblox is a decent game for its time. However, unlike the AF games, these just don't hold up anymore. When given the choice between the actual game, that is AF1, and the visual novel, that is SPR, I think most will take the former in a heartbeat. But I feel time has just not been kind to SPR, and its lackluster ending and lack of replayability has doomed it to the fate that it has now. It really makes you wonder, or really makes you wish, that this game was like an actual Paper Mario game and was an RPG. Anyways, that's all I've got for this video. Once again, huge thank you to Sil for doing this. You are awesome. But anyways, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.